Good morning, everyone. I'm Carl, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about multitasking today. But first, I'm going to ask everybody a few questions. So if the answer is yes, just go ahead and raise your hand. Have you, in the last week, done homework? Have you, in the last week, done homework while listening to music? Have you, in the last week, done homework while listening to music, and sometime during that time, you checked your email? And have you done homework while listening to music, checked your email, and sometime during that time, scrolled through your social media accounts? Basically everybody. And me too. And you've probably thought that if you were multitasking, that you'd be able to get a lot more done than you normally could. But if you're also like me, you probably didn't get half as much done as you wanted to. We've been taught throughout our educational careers that multitasking is a huge benefit, and we must learn how to do it. I mean, just look at any job application. You have to be able to multitask, it says. But do the benefits of multitasking really exist? Multitasking inhibits our ability to focus and causes the overall quality of our work to suffer. Allow me to elaborate on that just a bit. A few weeks ago, I went to the library, and I was intent on doing some work for my final history research paper and also applying for jobs. A couple pretty noble goals, I'd say. So I got to the library, I sat down at a desktop there on the first floor, and I pulled out a big stack of research materials and my laptop. Now, if you can imagine this situation, I'm sitting at a computer, and on my left, I've got a huge stack of books and papers. In the middle, I've got the desktop, and on my right, I've got my laptop. I fired up email on the desktop, and I loaded the St. Thomas careers page and also the LinkedIn careers page on my laptop. And so I began to search through jobs, and like I was saying earlier, that common thread between every job was that you had to be able to multitask. And so I thought to myself, multitask? I can multitask. Who can't multitask, right? So I began to prove it to myself. And I scrolled through email on my computer, I scrolled through more jobs, I did a little bit for my paper, went through all my social media, went through my phone, changed my music, probably for about 2.5, 3 hours. And at the end of that 3 hours, I sat back in my chair and I took out my headphones and I thought, I haven't done anything. And so I thought, I just need to get better at multitasking. And by sheer coincidence later that night, I was reading Reclaiming Conversation by Sherry Turkle, who's a professor at MIT and scholar of interpersonal communication. And I focused on her chapters on education and work. And in this chapter, she focuses a lot on something that she calls the myth of multitasking. She says that science and research prove that you cannot simply become better at multitasking. She writes, not only do multitaskers have trouble deciding on how to organize their time, but crucially, they forget how to read human emotions. She cites a complex 2009 study from Stanford scholar Clifford Nass and his colleagues, in which they took two groups of people and they sorted them, and they called them medium multitaskers. And they sorted them into two groups. One was called heavy medium multitaskers, and the other was called light medium multitaskers. And the heavy medium multitaskers were the group of people that used lots of forms of digital media and technology, and the other group, they used a little bit of digital media and technology, but not nearly as much as the heavy medium multitaskers. And so they hypothesized before this experiment that it was going to be the heavy medium multitaskers who'd be able to change tasks and deal with interferences and maintain their focus through complex situations because they'd have this practice with many different forms of technology. But what they found was that the heavy medium multitaskers could not deal with interferences at all, they could not maintain their focus, and they couldn't change tasks very well. In short, the science and research prove that multitasking is detrimental to the overall output of an individual. The myth of multitasking is very real in the digital age. So what does this mean for us? You know, we've been taught that we have to multitask. But if we multitask, we lose our ability to focus, and crucially, we can't change tasks, and we won't be able to deal with any interferences in our work. Just think of me back there in the library. I was definitely a heavy medium multitasker there. I couldn't focus on anything. I couldn't deal with interferences. I didn't really get anything done. And crucially, what the science and research tells me is that in that time, I was losing my ability to understand and read human emotions. That's a little scary, huh? So instead of being upset that you cannot multitask like a champ, work on narrowing your focus and work on limiting multitasking in your daily life. Remember that the myth of multitasking is very real. So when you have this urge to go sit down at a computer and pull out your laptop and your phone and your music and everything, just remember that the best thing you could possibly do is narrow your focus and focus on one thing only. Thank you.